Welcome back everyone to J-Face Games. It's been a little while, and today we are talking about the board game Destinies. Destinies is a cooperative board game that's very story-driven. I have not played it yet, but apparently it's very similar to, or it's got some similarities to Seventh Continent, which I do own and love, with some other variations to it. It's supposed to be wonderful, and I've seen glowing reviews. And what I wanted to talk about today is, after watching some of those reviews, it has a very interesting skill mechanic for its characters, right? So you have a character and you've got their skills, and then you are making skill checks. And a lot of board games, sort of adventure, dungeonist type games, Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror, etc., we've talked about, have their own little skill checks. This one has a really interesting one. So let's take a look. I think this is really unique. So the idea here is that this is your character board. And you have these 3 tracks, and you have these little white discs that can then be placed on these tracks at different points, right? And then you have dice. Now, let's get an example here of a pre-sort of set up one. I guess this will work. I was looking to see if there was one where it had it nicely set up to begin with, because that first one we saw was great, but the discs were kind of like haphazardly strewn about. Okay, so in essence what you're going to have is sort of like this, but you can have more than one disc. You could have 2 discs on this row, one over here, one over here, one way back here. You could have 3 discs. You might even have 4, right? What happens is that, as you saw before, the dice here, this is a good example, these numbers up here represent what you're going to try to roll on your dice. And the dice either come in white and purple. The white ones go from 1 to 4. The purple ones go from 1 to 3. And so you're going to be rolling these dice, and the purple ones, you might be able to add more purple ones, etc. So pretty much, if I rolled if you rolled this here, a 9, and say we're rolling for this skill, this book one, probably intelligence or something, speed or dexterity type stuff, or ranged attacks, and here's melee type strength, etc. If I rolled a 9, that means I would have rolled right here. That means I would have had, because it's past 2 different discs, that means I would have had 2 successes. Whereas if I rolled an 11, it would still just be 2 successes on this track, but an 11 on this track means that I get 3 successes. If I roll a 5, well, 5 here gives me at least 1 success. Doesn't give me successes on the other tracks. There's this interesting mechanic in this game where when you level, you can either A, spend experience points and level and move 1 disc lower, or B, add more discs. You can see that there's this interesting balancing act where I could get my stats to the point where a 1 skill challenge is automatic. Right? I can get this disc all the way down here, but in doing so, it makes it harder potentially to get a 2 skill check, or a 3. I can't even get a 3 skill check with this one, right? So there's this interesting combination of, I can push these lower in order to succeed at easy stuff without risk, but I can't actually succeed at hard stuff, or I could, push these up harder, right? So this is a really cool mechanic. This is a really cool conceptually. And when I first looked at this, I thought these were just 2 normal d6s, thinking that, okay, I just rolled a 2d6, and what's my chances of getting this? It's a little bit more interesting in terms of what does that mean with the I don't know what the math is. I don't know how many sides are 4s, how many sides are 3s. I don't know. This is probably 2 sides 1, 2 sides 2, 2 sides 3. But I don't know what the representation is on this pips. And therefore, I don't know what the math is here. I don't have any idea what the math is. But I can figure out the math if I just did 2d6, right? And what does that look like? And it becomes this really interesting concept of, now, technically, you could have, in a game, right? You could have, let's do a quick table. You could have it so your stat line, or your skill line, let's just do dex, strength, like standard stuff. Strength, dex, whiz, int, con, charisma. We'll just do this stat array. And then we can have 2 successes, 3 successes, 4 successes. Oh wait, one. We need 1 success. 1 success, 2 success, 3 success, 4 successes, right? And so now on your character sheet, this might be convoluted but you might not do the pips like they have. You might just have this pen and paper. So maybe you have on an array of 2 to 12, we'll say 2 to 12, that you end up having something like, I don't know, my strength is a 6, a 9, a 12, and I don't have a 4. My dex is a 2. I pushed it really down low, but now this one's a 10, or we'll say it's a 12. I've only got 2 of them. This one is, maybe it's a little bit more nice spread, right? Who knows, right? And so in essence, and we'll just duplicate some of this, just so I'm a completionist. I can't not have this complete, right? Because then my brain will forever be angry. I don't know what's happening there. 5, 7, 12. Okay. So say this ends up being sort of like your character sheet, right? You could then think of monsters very similar to ICRPG, where you could say ICRPG thinks in effort, right? Effort needed to accomplish a task. You could then think of these roles as up here is the effort you apply, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the effort that you actually apply, right? So maybe you don't need a damage dice in this system, technically. You could add one still. Maybe you might be able to figure out a way. But now what happens is, say there's like a goblin who takes 2 effort to kill, right? Well, if I'm using strength, I need to roll a 9 or higher on 2d6, right? But technically, maybe there's other ways to get multiple attacks. Maybe there's ways to, you think about me and my teammate need to apply effort. And so it's very easy for me to do ranged attack and get a 1 effort, right? So maybe this game you have 2 attacks and each attack is 2d6 roll. So I know that I could take both my attacks and pretty much I'm going to kill this goblin because I can always do 1 effort on my rolls. Maybe you have a like Imperial Salt or Descent, they have those D6 that has an X on one of the sides that then makes it so that's an auto-fail. So maybe there's an auto-fail in this system. You can get this down this low, but there's always an auto-fail chance, right? I don't know. Maybe you don't use 2D6. Maybe you just use a D20. And so now I'm just going to roll this D20, and instead of this being 6 to 12, those kind of things, it's now, I can get it down to a 10, a 12, or whatever. And maybe to get into different categories, it costs different amount of XP, right? So like 1 to 5, if you're moving anywhere in that range, 2 of 5, 2 of 4, 2 of 3, on a stat, it costs a ton of XP, right? Whereas the 16 to 20 range, it only costs 1 XP to move 1 down, right? So you can easily move that way. But when you get into these other areas, when you're trying to get your percentage better, it costs more. So this is the idea. I think this is really interesting. I think this is pretty compelling as a concept. You could then still have some sort of like effort damage dice. Maybe it's like this is to roll, in essence, like your skill check. Maybe this isn't damage. Maybe this isn't effort. Maybe this is armor class, right? Maybe you don't think of it in this way. Maybe you think that AC versus effort, right? There's 2 different ways of thinking of this. You can think of this as a threshold, right? I need to get a 3 skill check to succeed at my task, and if I succeed at my task, then I'm going to do something, right? So that's one way of thinking about it. The other way of thinking about it is that this isn't a DC to hit in order to succeed, but the amount of effort I'm able to apply to the task, right? And I think those are both interesting ways of approaching it. I think they both could work. I can see benefits for both. The nice thing about this being effort towards a task is that you're always going to feel like you're probably succeeding in some way, like you're chipping away at something, which is kind of cool. If this is a threshold sort of scenario, then you run into the issue of potentially whiffing, right? Nothing's worse than missing in a game. But at least it's like, if I've got to kill something, it's got 4 effort, and I get a 1 effort because of my low roll, at least I feel like I'm helping the group still. I'm chipping away at it, but yeah. So then the question becomes like, do you have a additional effort die based on weapon, based on feats, based on die roll of some sort? So maybe you roll like 2d6 and there's an extra die, and that extra die is the one that has the X on it, and then it also has like blank spots, and then it has like a +1 or a +2. So now it's like giving extra effort. So that's sort of describing the savagery of the attack, maybe, or something, or the randomness of that attack. I don't know. Anyways, this is feat, not feats. Anyways, that's the idea. I really like that Destiny board game concept. I might play around with this. So right now, I think that the next video that's going to be coming out is sort of like the state of the game. I'm going to really sort of try to clean it up and make it a nice video that explains everything about the game thus far, and then probably a example playthrough of a scenario. My main thing here, though, is this has really got me thinking. I like it a lot. The only thing with that would be a bummer is that you could really end up with a character sheet that just looks like an Excel sheet, that just looks like this, you know, awful looking table, which maybe that's not compelling. Maybe that's just like, oh God, what am I looking at? But I don't know, you know, because I mean, you could easily have it, instead of being a table, it's just like stat, and then it's number slash number slash number or something. Anyways, what are your thoughts? What are your comments? Leave some, you know, comments down below. Hit the subscribe, hit the bell. I really want to know what you think about this one. I think it's pretty cool conceptually. So yeah, let me know what you think, guys. See ya.